The near-silent hum of the Rolls-Royce Ghost faded as Ethan Bennett let out an exhausted sigh, his eyes etched with the deep lines of a cross-country flight, taking in the sprawling Beverly Hills estate before him. The entryway lights flickered on, a motion-activated welcome bathing the manicured stone pathway in a warm, golden glow. "Finally home," he murmured, instinctively straightening the silk of his expensive tie and grabbing his alligator skin briefcase. The driver had already silently retrieved the luggage from the trunk, placing it with practiced care beside the car. Ethan offered a brief nod of thanks, a gesture of dismissal, and his footsteps, shod in Italian leather, echoed in the quiet California night as he ascended the grand portico steps, his mind still a whirlwind of contracts and market analyses from his trip to New York. That was when he stumbled. Catching his balance, Ethan looked down, a curse ready on his lips for whatever had obstructed his path. The words evaporated in his throat. There, curled into a tight ball on the top step before his massive front door, was a little girl. Her frail frame trembled even in the mild evening air. A tangle of matted hair covered much of her face, but it couldn't hide the gauntness of her cheeks or the alarming pallor of her skin. Ethan froze, his fingers tightening reflexively on the handle of his briefcase. His heart hammered against his ribs, a chaotic symphony of shock and utter confusion overwhelming him. What on earth was a child doing here, and in such a state? He scanned the deserted palm-lined street, searching for any sign of a parent or guardian. The neighborhood was silent, save for the distant hum of traffic on Sunset Boulevard. Unsure, Ethan moved closer. Should he call the police? Should he wake her? His every corporate instinct screamed at him to avoid this complication, to step inside and let someone else handle it. But something held him back. Slowly, he crouched, extending a hesitant hand. "Hey," he called softly, "are you all right?" The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a second, she seemed lost, blinking rapidly at the unfamiliar opulence. Then, as her gaze focused on Ethan, her face transformed, a desperate mix of hope and despair. "Please," she whispered, her voice weak and raspy, "please help." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. Up close, the child's condition was even more dire. Her clothes, though clean, were threadbare and swam on her tiny frame. Her arms were disturbingly thin, the bones of her wrists jutting out sharply. "What's your name?" Ethan asked, his voice calmer than he felt. "Lily," she answered, trying to push herself up. I've been looking for so long." Ethan frowned, perplexed. "Looking for what, Lily?" The girl's eyes welled with tears. "You. Mom said she promised you would help." The world seemed to tilt on its axis around Ethan. He stood up abruptly, taking a half-step back. Lily looked at him with wide, frightened eyes, as if she expected him to bolt. "My mom is really sick," she continued, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "She can't take care of me anymore. She said you were our last hope." Ethan felt his blood run cold, his mind racing to make sense of the impossible. Who was this child's mother? Why would she believe he, of all people, would help? Lily tried to stand again, but her legs gave way. Instinctively, Ethan lunged forward and caught her, shocked by how little she weighed. "Please," she begged again, her small hands clinging to the sleeve of his custom-tailored suit. "Don't abandon us. Not again." Her final words struck Ethan like a physical blow. He looked down at the child in his arms, a powerful wave of déjà vu crashing over him. There was something achingly familiar in her eyes, in the determined set of her chin. Without another thought, Ethan scooped her up. Lily sagged against him, a sigh of relief escaping her lips as if she were finally safe after an impossibly long journey. "Let's go inside," he said, his voice hoarser than he'd intended. "We'll figure out what's going on." As he pushed open the heavy oak door and carried Lily into the cavernous foyer of his mansion, Ethan knew his life had irrevocably changed. Whatever this child represented, a mistake from a long-forgotten past or something far more complex, he could no longer pretend she didn't exist. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing the quiet night outside. But inside the mansion, the echoes of a deeply buried past had begun to stir, poised to shake the very foundations of Ethan Bennett's carefully constructed world. The mansion's two-story foyer, normally a showcase of silent, minimalist opulence, now echoed with the soft tread of Ethan's shoes and Lily's ragged breaths. The chandelier's gentle light cast a stark contrast between the home's luxurious marble and art and the fragile, neglected appearance of the girl in the millionaire's arms. "Mr. Bennett?" The surprised voice of Agnes, the stern, middle-aged housekeeper, cut through the silence. Her eyes widened, taking in the unprecedented scene. "What? Who is this child?" Ethan hesitated, still holding Lily protectively. "Agnes, please prepare the guest suite on the ground floor, and bring some broth or something light to eat if you would." Agnes's brow furrowed, her expression a mixture of professional concern and personal disapproval. "Sir, with all due respect, I don't think it's wise to bring a stranger into the house. Maybe we should call the authorities." "No?" The exclamation came from Lily, her voice thin but fierce. She tightened her grip on Ethan as though terrified she'd be ripped away from him. Ethan felt something twist deep inside him. The girl's reaction was so raw, so desperate, it disarmed him completely. He looked at Agnes, his voice firm. "We're doing this my way for now. Please, just do as I asked." Agnes hesitated for a beat, but years of loyal service won out. With a reluctant nod, she turned to carry out her orders. Ethan carried Lily into the vast living room, gently placing her on a plush white leather sofa. Under the room's brighter, recessed lighting, the girl's state was even more alarming. Her eyes, large and startlingly expressive, seemed to dominate her gaunt face. "Lily," Ethan began, sitting in an armchair across from her, "I need you to tell me exactly why you came here. Who is your mother? How does she know me?" The girl bit her lip, her fingers fidgeting with the frayed hem of her oversized t-shirt. "Mom, she's really sick. She can't work anymore. We lost our home." Tears began to pool in her eyes. "She said you were our last hope, that you made a promise a long time ago." Ethan's heart rate quickened. A promise. He scoured the archives of his memory, trying to unearth anything that could explain this surreal situation. "What's your mother's name, Lily?" he asked softly. "Sarah," she replied. "Sarah Miller." The name struck Ethan like a physical blow, a lightning bolt to the heart. Fragmented images flooded his mind, a radiant smile against a Cape Cod sunset, laughter echoing over the waves, whispered promises under a canopy of stars. Sarah! How could he have possibly forgotten? Just then, Agnes returned with a tray bearing a bowl of warm soup and some crackers. "The room is ready, Mr. Bennett," she announced, placing the tray on the glass coffee table. Her gaze flickered between Ethan and Lily, her curiosity palpable, but she remained respectfully silent. "Thank you, Agnes. You can retire for the evening." Once they were alone, Ethan encouraged Lily to eat. He watched, a knot of fascination and horror in his stomach, as the girl consumed the simple meal with a hunger that spoke of days of deprivation. "Lily," he said gently once she'd finished, "how did you find me?" The girl set her spoon down, her eyes meeting Ethan's. "Mom had an old photo. Your name was written on the back. I searched online. I found news about you. About this house." She paused, swallowing hard. "It took me days to get here. I was scared it wouldn't be the right place." Ethan felt a surge of awe for this child's tenacity. Simultaneously, a deeply unsettling feeling coiled in his gut. How desperate must Sarah's situation have been to send her daughter on such a perilous quest? "Where is your mother now, Lily?" "In the hospital," she whispered, the tears finally falling. "She was so weak when I left. I promised I'd find help." Ethan stood abruptly, striding over to the floor-to-ceiling window. His reflection stared back at him, a man caught between a past he'd ruthlessly tried to bury and a present that demanded he face it. He turned back, looking at Lily. There was something about her, perhaps the way she tilted her head, the sharp intelligence in her eyes, that felt unnervingly familiar, a connection he couldn't name but felt in his bones. "Let's rest tonight," he decided finally. "Tomorrow we'll go see your mother." The relief that washed over Lily's face was palpable. She stood, wobbling slightly, and to Ethan's complete surprise, she wrapped her thin arms around his waist in a hug. "Thank you," she murmured into his shirt. "Mom was right about you." Ethan stiffened for a moment, unaccustomed to such open displays of affection. Then, slowly, his arms came around the small girl, feeling her frailty, her warmth. As he led her to the guest suite, Ethan knew he was stepping into uncharted territory. His meticulously ordered life was about to be turned upside down. But looking at Lily, seeing the trust and hope shining in her eyes, he knew there was no going back. Whatever the truth behind Lily's story, whatever his connection to Sarah Miller, Ethan knew he couldn't just walk away. Not again. Lying in his own king-sized bed that night, sleep was a distant country. His mind was a torrent of long-suppressed memories and unanswerable questions. But one thing was certain. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. The California sun had barely crested the hills when Ethan awoke, the previous night's surreal events feeling both dreamlike and starkly real. He dressed quickly, an unfamiliar urgency propelling him toward the guest suite to check on Lily. As he neared the door, he heard the muffled sounds of distress. Opening it gently, he found Lily thrashing in the large bed, muttering frantic, unintelligible words, her face contorted in anguish. "No, please. Mom," she moaned, trapped in the grip of her nightmare. Ethan approached hesitantly, unsure how to comfort the distressed child. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Lily? It's all right. You're safe." The girl's eyes flew open, wide and disoriented. For a moment, she seemed not to know where she was. Then, as her gaze locked on Ethan, a fresh wave of tears streamed down her cheeks. "I dreamed Mom was calling me," she sobbed. "And there was a man. He was supposed to help, but he kept turning his back." Ethan felt a cold lump form in his throat. The dream's imagery was disturbingly specific, an echo of his own past cowardice. Swallowing hard, he sat on the edge of the bed. "It was just a nightmare, Lily," he said softly. "I'm here now, and we're going to help your mom. I promise." The girl nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Again, Ethan was struck by how frail she looked, her sunken cheeks and the dark circles under her eyes, telling a story of profound hardship. "Let's have breakfast," he suggested, aiming for a light, reassuring tone. "Then I have a friend who's a doctor. I'd like her to take a look at you, if that's okay." Lily agreed quietly, following Ethan to the gleaming, state-of-the-art kitchen. While she devoured the breakfast Agnes prepared, Ethan stepped into his office to make a call. "Emily, it's Ethan. I need a big favor." An hour later, Dr. Emily Carter arrived at the estate. She was a sharp, composed woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes behind stylish frames. Her expression was a mix of professional concern and personal curiosity as Ethan led her toward Lily. "Ethan, here? What's going on?" she asked in a low voice. "You call me urgently asking for discretion, and now I see a child in clear need of medical care in your house." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "It's a long story, Emily. Please examine her first. I promise I'll explain everything afterward." Emily nodded, their years of friendship affording him the trust to delay his explanation. She approached Lily with a warm, disarming smile. "Hello, Lily. I'm Dr. Carter. Ethan asked me to check if you're all right. Is it okay if I examine you?" Lily glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging nod before she agreed. Emily conducted the exam with efficient kindness, asking the girl gentle questions. After about half an hour, she asked to speak with Ethan privately in his office. Away from Lily's hearing, the doctor's expression turned grave. "Ethan, this girl is severely malnourished. There are signs of prolonged neglect, though it doesn't appear intentional." She mentioned her mother is sick? Ethan nodded, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Yes, apparently her mother is hospitalized. Emily, what else can you tell me? Emily sighed, removing her glasses to rub the bridge of her nose. Besides the malnutrition, she's exhausted, physically and emotionally. She mentioned walking for days to get here. It's a miracle she managed it in this state. A wave of guilt washed over Ethan. If only he'd known. If he had ever bothered to keep in touch. What should I do, Emily? He asked, his voice betraying his uncertainty. Emily looked at him seriously. First, she needs proper nutrition and rest. But Ethan, that's just the beginning. This child needs stability, consistent care. And her mother, wherever she is, probably needs urgent help as well. Ethan nodded, his mind already formulating a plan. Thank you, Emily. I know I asked a lot, bringing you here like this. Emily offered a small, reassuring smile. We've been friends for decades, Ethan. Just promise me you'll take care of this girl, and maybe fill me in on the whole story soon. After Emily left, Ethan found Lily in the living room, staring out the vast window with a faraway look. Lily, he called softly. Dr. Carter said you need to rest and eat well. But also, I think it's time for us to find your mother. The girl's eyes lit up with renewed hope. Really? We can go see her? Ethan nodded, sitting beside her. Yes. But first, I need you to tell me everything you know. Which hospital is she in? When was the last time you saw her? As Lily spoke, describing a crowded public hospital and the agonizing days before she left, a storm of emotions churned inside Ethan. Guilt for the past, profound concern for the present, and a burgeoning determination for the future. Lily's story, fragmented and told through a child's eyes, painted a harrowing picture of struggle and despair. Sarah Miller had apparently tried everything to care for her daughter, even as her own health failed. Sending Lily to find him was clearly an act of last resort, a desperate gamble by a mother with no other options. As Lily talked, Ethan felt that inexplicable connection to her growing stronger. There was something about the girl's quiet determination, her resilience in the face of so much adversity, that moved him to his core. We'll find her, Lily, Ethan promised, his voice resolute. We'll help your mother, and we'll put all of this behind us. The gratitude in the girl's eyes was a tangible thing, and Ethan felt the full weight of the responsibility he was assuming. He knew he was stepping into a minefield, potentially unearthing a past he had spent 2 decades trying to forget. But looking at Lily, seeing the raw hope and trust in her gaze, Ethan knew there was no turning back. Whatever the truth about Sarah's story, whatever his connection to the past, he was committed now. As he prepared for the journey that lay ahead, Ethan couldn't help but marvel at how drastically his life had changed in less than 24 hours. From a solitary millionaire to a man on a mission to save a family he barely knew. The future was a terrifying unknown, but one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same. Ethan's Rolls-Royce glided silently through the L.A. traffic, a stark metal and glass bubble of wealth in stark contrast to the increasingly gritty neighborhoods they passed through. In the plush leather back seat, Lily pressed her face against the window, her eager eyes absorbing every detail of the changing urban landscape. "It's around here," she murmured, pointing to a block of rundown, graffiti-tagged buildings. "We lived in a smaller apartment on the 3rd floor. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his throat. The thought of Sarah, the vibrant, artistic Sarah he remembered, and Lily living in such conditions was a deeply troubling one. "What was life like for you both here, Lily?" The girl pulled her gaze from the window, her eyes meeting Ethan's in the rearview mirror. "It was hard. Mom worked a lot, at 2 jobs sometimes. I wouldn't see her for days." Ethan nodded, encouraging her to continue. As Lily spoke, a painful picture formed in his mind. Sarah, struggling to keep a roof over their heads, sacrificing everything for her child. Lily, often alone, a latchkey kid forced to be self-reliant while her mother worked tirelessly. When Mom got sick, Lily continued, her voice trembling slightly. Everything got even harder. She couldn't work anymore. We lost the apartment. We were on the street for a while. Ethan gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Guilt, sharp and acidic, consumed him. If only he had known. If only he had done things differently. "You were very brave, Lily," he said softly, struggling to keep his voice from cracking. "And your mother, too. You're both incredibly strong." A small, hesitant smile touched the girl's lips, the first genuine one Ethan had seen. Mom always said we were a team, that as long as we were together, we could get through anything. The car pulled up in front of L.A. County General Hospital, a grim, imposing concrete building that seemed to sag under the weight of its own history. Ethan saw the line of people at the emergency entrance, many looking as desperate as Lily had the night before. "It's here," Lily said, her voice a fragile mix of anxiety and hope. They entered the hospital, immediately assaulted by the smell of antiseptic and human suffering. The walls, once white, were now a dingy yellow. Outdated equipment lined the crowded corridors, where overworked nurses rushed back and forth with grim determination. Ethan approached the information desk, Lily clinging to his side. "We're looking for Sarah Miller," he told the exhausted-looking receptionist. After several minutes of typing and searching the system, the woman looked up at them with a flat, weary expression. "I'm sorry, but we have no patient under that name." Ethan's heart plummeted. He turned to Lily, whose face was a mask of pure terror. No, she has to be here," the girl exclaimed, tears welling in her eyes. Ethan knelt beside her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Calm down, Lily. We'll figure out what happened. Maybe she was transferred or—" "Wait," the receptionist interrupted, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "We did have an unidentified patient admitted about a week ago. A Jane Doe. She was unconscious and had no documents." "Could it be?" Lily gasped, clutching Ethan's suit jacket. "It could be her. Please, can we see her?" After a few more questions and a brief, tense discussion with a resident doctor, they were led to a chaotic, overcrowded ward. Ethan's heart clenched at the sight. Beds crammed together, ancient-looking equipment, and a visibly overwhelmed medical staff. And there, in a bed in the far corner, was Sarah. Ethan felt as if the air had been punched from his lungs. Even after all these years, even through the ravages of illness, he recognized her instantly. Her face was pale and gaunt, a web of tubes and wires connecting her fragile body to beeping machines. But it was undeniably her. "Mom!" Lily cried, rushing to the bedside. She took Sarah's limp hand, tears streaming freely down her face. Ethan stood motionless for a moment, caught in a maelstrom of emotions: guilt, shock, sadness, and a fierce, rising determination. The resident doctor approached, his expression grave. "She's in a medically induced coma. Her condition is stable, but critical. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources needed for proper treatment." Those words snapped Ethan out of his stupor. He turned to the doctor, his voice imbued with the authority of a man who ran a billion-dollar company. "I want her transferred immediately. To the Mayo Clinic. I'll cover all the costs." The doctor blinked, stunned. "Sir, a transfer like that requires—" "Make it happen," Ethan interrupted, leaving no room for argument. He pulled out his phone, already dialing. "Emily, I need your help again. I'm transferring a patient to the Mayo Clinic. I want you to lead the case personally." In the hours that followed, Ethan orchestrated a logistical operation that left the public hospital staff dumbfounded. A state-of-the-art medical transport jet arrived, accompanied by a specialized team from the Mayo Clinic. Sarah was carefully prepped for the flight, with Lily refusing to leave her side for a second. As he watched Sarah's gurney being loaded onto the jet, Ethan felt the crushing weight of his past actions and the immense responsibility of his current decisions. He looked at Lily, who held her mother's hand tightly, and made a silent vow. "I won't fail you again," he murmured to himself. The jet took off, heading for Minnesota, leaving behind a fundamentally changed Ethan Bennett. He knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would forever alter his life. The questions about his past with Sarah, an uncertain future, and the implications of his actions swirled around him. But looking at Lily, seeing the renewed flicker of hope in her eyes, Ethan knew he had made the right choice. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them. For Sarah, for Lily, and for a chance at a redemption he never knew he needed. The Mayo Clinic was a world away from the county facility they had left behind. Wide, brightly lit corridors, cutting-edge technology, and an aura of calm competence created an atmosphere of efficiency and hope. Ethan and Lily followed closely as the gurney carrying Sarah was wheeled through the immaculate halls. Dr. Emily Carter, having flown in to oversee the case, met them at the entrance to the intensive care unit, her face a mask of professional concern and personal curiosity. "Ethan," she greeted him with a brief nod before her attention shifted to the patient. "We'll take her for a full workup of tests right away. Please wait in the family lounge. I promise I'll update you as soon as I can." Lily was reluctant to let go of her mother's hand, her large eyes pleading with Ethan. He knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Lily. Dr. Carter is the best. She'll take good care of your mother. Let's let them work now, all right?" With one last lingering look at Sarah, Lily nodded, allowing Ethan to guide her to the comfortable, quiet waiting room. The next few hours were a torturous blend of silence and anxiety. Ethan watched Lily, who alternated between quiet, somber contemplation and bursts of anxious questions about her mother's prognosis. Finally, after an eternity, Emily reappeared. Her expression was serious but not hopeless. "She's stable," Emily began, sitting across from them. The coma was induced to allow her body to recover from a severe systemic infection, worsened by malnutrition and exhaustion. "We're treating the infection aggressively and providing intensive nutritional support. With the right care, we hope to bring her out of the coma in a few days." Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Beside him, Lily sobbed with quiet relief. "Can we see her?" the girl asked, her voice small but hopeful. Emily nodded with a gentle smile. "Yes, but only for a few minutes. She needs absolute rest." They followed Emily to Sarah's room. The contrast with the previous hospital was staggering. Here, Sarah was in a private suite, surrounded by an array of modern equipment silently monitoring her vital signs. Lily went straight to the bedside, carefully taking her mother's hand. Ethan, however, stood frozen in the doorway. Seeing Sarah so vulnerable, so fragile, unleashed a flood of memories he had spent 2 decades suppressing. Her face, though thinner and marked by hardship, still held the ghost of the vibrant young woman he had once loved. "Ethan?" Emily's voice pulled him from his reverie. "Are you all right?" He nodded mechanically, unable to articulate the turmoil raging inside him. Emily gave him a searching look before turning back to Lily, gently explaining the purpose of the various tubes and machines. Minutes ticked by, and soon it was time to let Sarah rest. As they prepared to leave, the unexpected happened. Sarah's eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. The room fell silent, the only sound the steady, rhythmic beeping of the monitors. Lily was the first to react. "Mom," she cried, tears of pure joy streaming down her face. Sarah blinked, her eyes unfocused and confused as they roamed the room. They finally landed on her daughter, and a faint smile touched her lips as she managed a weak squeeze of Lily's hand. Then her gaze drifted past her daughter and found Ethan. The recognition was instantaneous and shocking. Sarah's eyes widened, a complex storm of surprise, confusion, relief, and something deeper, more painful, flashing within them. "Ethan?" Her voice was barely a hoarse whisper, but it carried the weight of 20 years of unspoken history. Ethan took a step forward, feeling as if the floor was shifting beneath his feet. "Sarah," he replied, his own voice trembling. The moment of recognition was electric. Years of separation, secrets, and regret seemed to condense into that single, charged instant. Sarah tried to sit up, but Emily gently intervened. "Please, Ms. Miller," You need to stay lying down. Your body is still recovering." Sarah nodded weakly, but her eyes remained locked on Ethan. You found Lily," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her gaze. "Yes," he responded softly. "She found me, actually." Lily looked back and forth between her mother and Ethan, her large eyes filled with unasked questions. "Mom, you know Mr. Bennett?" Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her strength. When she opened them again, they were shimmering with unshed tears. "Yes, sweetie. Ethan and I? We knew each other a long time ago." Ethan felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. The reality of the situation, a possibility he had been subconsciously avoiding, crashed down on him with full force. Sarah, the woman he had abandoned all those years ago, was here, frail and ill. And Lily, the brave little girl who had appeared on his doorstep, was almost certainly his daughter. The connection between the three of them, once a nebulous feeling, was now a glaring, undeniable fact. He felt the full weight of his past choices, the consequences of his actions and inactions, piling onto his shoulders. Sensing the immense tension, Emily gently intervened. "Sarah needs to rest now. We can continue this conversation when she's stronger." Ethan nodded mechanically, still reeling from the revelation. Lily kissed her mother's cheek, promising to come back soon. As they turned to leave, Sarah's weak voice stopped them. "Ethan." He turned. Their eyes met again, heavy with unspoken emotions. "Thank you for taking care of her." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to say so much, to apologize, to ask questions, to explain, but all he could manage was a silent, solemn nod before stepping out of the room. Out in the hallway, Ethan leaned against the cool wall, feeling the weight of 2 decades of secrets and regret. Lily looked up at him, her expression a mix of confusion and anticipation. "Mr. Bennett?" she began hesitantly. "How do you know my mom?" Ethan looked down at the girl, his daughter, he now realized with crystalline clarity, and felt a flood of emotions wash over him: love, guilt, fear, and a fierce, protective determination. "It's a long story, Lily," he replied gently, "one that I think it's time to tell." Guiding Lily back toward the waiting area, Ethan knew his life had been irrevocably fractured and remade. The past he had so desperately tried to bury had resurfaced, bringing with it challenges and possibilities he had never imagined. But looking at Lily, seeing in her features traces of Sarah and traces of himself, he felt a new resolve hardening within him. Whatever the future held, he would face it head-on, for Sarah, for Lily, and for the chance to right the most profound wrong of his past. The days following the revelation at the Mayo Clinic were an emotional whirlwind for everyone. Ethan oscillated between moments of sheer euphoria when interacting with Lily and periods of deep, gnawing guilt and anxiety. Sarah, still recovering, watched the burgeoning bond between father and daughter with a complex mixture of relief and apprehension. Lily, for her part, seemed to be floating in a state of hopeful confusion, peppering Ethan with endless questions about his life, his work, his experiences, eager to fill the gaping void left by years of an absent father. It was during a quiet afternoon, with the Minnesota sun filtering through the blinds of Sarah's hospital room, that she finally felt strong enough to confront the truth they had buried for 2 decades. "I think it's time we talked," she said softly, her gaze shifting between Ethan and Lily. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs as he nodded, pulling a chair closer to the bed. Lily perched on the edge of the mattress, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. Sarah took a deep breath, as if summoning her courage. "Lily, sweetie, do you remember the stories I told you about how I met your father?" The girl nodded slowly. "You said he was a brilliant student, and you two fell in love one summer." A sad, gentle smile crossed Sarah's lips. "Yes, that's true, but there's more to that story." She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with the weight of unspoken history. "Ethan and I met 20 years ago, in a small coastal town. As she spoke, the memories flooded Ethan's mind, as vivid and painful as if they had happened yesterday. Flashback. The sun was setting over the Atlantic on Cape Cod, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink. Ethan, then 22, and a fresh-faced Harvard MBA graduate, walked along the beach, his mind consumed with the bright, ambitious future awaiting him in New York City. That's when he saw her. Sarah was sitting on the sand, idly drawing patterns with a piece of driftwood. Her dark hair danced in the sea breeze, and when she looked up, her eyes meeting his, time seemed to stand still. "Hi," he'd said, feeling an uncharacteristic nervousness. Her smile lit up her entire face. "Hello?" That simple exchange was the beginning of a magical, whirlwind summer. Ethan and Sarah were inseparable, spending their days exploring the quaint town and their nights talking for hours under the stars. He spoke of his grand ambitions. She shared her passion for art and her dreams of a more compassionate world. "We'll change the world together," Ethan had promised one night, holding her hands. "You with your art, me with my business. We'll be unstoppable." Sarah had laughed, a sound sweeter than anything Ethan had ever heard. "All I need is you, Ethan. The rest is a bonus." But as the summer drew to its inevitable close, reality began to intrude. Ethan had his high-powered career waiting, and Sarah was determined to finish her art degree at RISD. "We can make it work," Sarah had insisted, tears in her eyes. "True love overcomes distance, doesn't it?" Ethan had wanted to believe it with every fiber of his being, but the fear of commitment, the anxiety about his future, gnawed at his resolve. On his last night, Ethan made the choice that would haunt him for the next 20 years. Without a goodbye, without an explanation, he left, leaving only a vague, cowardly note about going their separate ways. End of flashback. "I was devastated," Sarah continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I couldn't understand how something so special could end so abruptly." Ethan lowered his head, shame a hot physical presence. "I was a coward," he admitted, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I was so afraid of failing, of not being good enough for you, that I thought it would be easier to cut all ties." Lily listened, her eyes wide as she tried to process this new, painful reality. "But what about my father?" she asked, her voice small and confused. Sarah reached out, gently stroking her daughter's hair. "Sweetheart?" "A few weeks after Ethan left, I found out I was pregnant." The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Ethan felt as if the ground had vanished from beneath him. All the disparate pieces of the puzzle finally clicked into place, revealing a picture he should have seen long ago. You're my father?" Lily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan looked at Sarah, seeking confirmation. She nodded slowly. "I tried to find you, Ethan," she said, her voice soft but pained. "But you had disappeared. You changed numbers, addresses. It was as if you had evaporated." Guilt struck Ethan like a physical blow. He remembered how he had thrown himself into his work, moving from city to city, climbing the corporate ladder with a single-minded obsession. Anything to outrun the memories, the regret. I had no idea," he stammered, the words feeling utterly inadequate for the magnitude of the situation. Lily's gaze shifted from her mother to Ethan, tears welling in her eyes. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked Sarah. Sarah sighed deeply. "At first it hurt too much. Then, well, I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to feel abandoned or unloved." Ethan felt his heart break at her words. The thought that his daughter, might feel that way because of his actions was unbearable. "Lily," he said softly, extending a hesitant hand toward her, "I know this is a shock for all of us. But I want you to know, if I had known, if I'd had even the slightest idea." Words failed him, and he felt hot tears trace paths down his cheeks, years of repressed emotion, regret, and lost possibilities flooding him. Lily looked at him, her eyes, so much like his he now realized, filled with confusion and hurt. But there was something else there, too, a tiny spark of hope. Do you want to be my dad now?" she asked timidly. The question struck Ethan like lightning. It was a second chance, a gift he had never dared to dream of, an opportunity to correct the greatest mistake of his life. "More than anything in the world," he answered, his voice choked with emotion. Sarah watched the scene, tears in her own eyes, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. There was pain, but there was also relief, as if a weight she had carried alone for 2 decades was finally being shared. "We have a lot to talk about," she said softly. "A lot to work through. But maybe we can start again." Ethan nodded, a fierce determination solidifying within him. "I promise," he said, looking first into Sarah's eyes and then Lily's. "I'll do everything I can to make up for lost time, to be the father and partner you both deserve." Lily, after a moment's hesitation, moved closer to Ethan. He opened his arms, and she allowed herself to be hugged, sobbing softly against his chest. In that moment, enfolded in the embrace of his newly discovered daughter, with Sarah watching them with a mixture of hope and caution, Ethan Bennett knew his life had changed forever. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with painful conversations and complicated adjustments. But for the first time in 20 years, he felt truly, completely alive. The emptiness he had carried for so long was beginning to fill with something precious, the chance to love and be loved, to be part of a family. And he silently vowed that this time he wouldn't run. This time he would stay and fight for what truly mattered. The days that followed the revelation were a roller coaster of emotions for everyone involved. Ethan swung between moments of joy during his time with Lily and periods of profound guilt and anxiety. Sarah, still recuperating in the hospital, watched the father-daughter relationship grow with both relief and apprehension. Lily seemed both hopeful and overwhelmed, firing questions at Ethan about his life, eager to fill the void of years without a father figure. During one of these Q&A sessions, a doubt began to gnaw at Ethan. Seated by Sarah's hospital bed with Lily between them, he couldn't help noticing the physical resemblance between mother and daughter. But what about him? Were there any of his traits in her? Uncertainty consumed him. What if there was a mistake? What if, for some reason, he wasn't really Lily's father? "Sarah," he said quietly, taking advantage of a moment when Lily had stepped out for a snack. "I know you said I'm Lily's father, and I want to believe that more than anything, but—" Sarah watched him, a shadow crossing her eyes. "But you want to be sure," she finished for him. Ethan nodded, feeling guilty for doubting her. "It's not that I don't believe you. It's just, after everything that's happened, I think we all deserve 100% certainty." Sarah was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. Lily deserves that certainty. We all do." So, with Sarah's consent, Ethan began the process for a DNA test. He gently explained to Lily what it was and why they were doing it. "It's kind of like a scientific puzzle," he tried to clarify. "It'll show us if our pieces fit together perfectly." Lily seemed to understand, though Ethan could see the flicker of worry in her eyes. What if they don't fit?" she asked in a low voice. Ethan felt his heart clench. He knelt in front of her, holding her small hands in his. "Lily, no matter what that test says, I already love you, and I'll keep loving you and caring for you, no matter the result. I promise." The wait for the results felt endless. Ethan found himself constantly studying Lily, searching for similarities, the shape of her eyes, the curve of her nose, her smile. He oscillated between moments of absolute certainty and corrosive doubt. Sarah watched him with a blend of understanding and concern. "Ethan," she said one evening when they were alone, "I know you're anxious, but you need to understand, no matter what happens, Lily needs you now. She's clung to the idea of having a father." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I know, and I promise, Sarah, I won't disappear again. Never." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the envelope with the results arrived. Ethan held it in his trembling hands, feeling as though he were about to open Pandora's box. He gathered Sarah and Lily in the hospital room. The air was charged with tension and expectation. "Everyone ready?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt inside. Sarah nodded, holding Lily's hand. The girl stared at the envelope, her large eyes filled with both hope and fear. With a deep breath, Ethan opened the envelope and unfolded the paper. His eyes skimmed the technical details until they landed on the conclusion. The world seemed to stand still for a moment. "Positive," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. 99.99% probability of paternity. The silence that followed was broken by Lily's sob. She flung herself into Ethan's arms, crying and laughing at the same time. "Daddy," she murmured through her tears, "you really are my daddy." Ethan held her tight, tears of his own flowing freely. He looked over at Sarah, who was smiling through her own tears. "I always knew," she said softly, "from the moment I held her for the first time." The reality of the situation slammed into Ethan. He was a father. He had been a father for 8 years without knowing it. The magnitude of his responsibility, the weight of his past actions, all of it hit him like a tidal wave. "I'm so sorry," he said, still hugging Lily but looking at Sarah. "I'm sorry I wasn't there, for all the moments I missed." Sarah reached out, gently touching Ethan's arm. "The past is the past, Ethan. What matters is what we do from now on." Ethan nodded, a growing determination within him. "I promise you both," he said, his voice firm despite his tears. "I'll make up for every lost second. I'll be the father Lily deserves. The partner you deserve, Sarah." Lily pulled away slightly, gazing up at Ethan with shining eyes. "Can we do dad and daughter stuff now? Like in the movies?" Ethan laughed, a deep, genuine sound that felt foreign and wonderful, his heart swelling with love. "Of course we can, sweetheart. Anything you want." The three remained in that embrace, a newly formed family facing an uncertain future, but full of possibilities. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep in a recliner next to Sarah's hospital bed, Ethan found himself gazing out the window. The city lights glowed below, but he barely noticed. His mind was filled with images of what might have been: missed birthdays, first days of school, nights of nightmares and bedtime stories. A whole lifetime of moments he could never get back. But alongside the guilt and regret, there was also something else. A fierce determination to do things right from now on, to be the father Lily deserved, to support Sarah, to build the family he had nearly lost out of fear and selfishness. "It's not too late," he murmured to himself, like a promise. "We still have time." Glancing over at Sarah and Lily sleeping peacefully, Ethan felt a surge of love and protection. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There was much to resolve, much to heal. But for the first time in years, Ethan Bennett felt complete. He had a purpose greater than contracts and profits. He had a family. And he silently vowed that this time he would get everything right. For Sarah, for Lily, and for the second chance he never imagined he deserved. The morning sun filtered through the hospital room's curtains, casting a gentle glow on the three occupants. Ethan, Sarah, and Lily sat in a loose semicircle, the air heavy with the expectation of the conversation to come. It was time to face the present and discuss the future. Ethan cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "I think we have a lot to talk about," he began, his gaze shifting between Sarah and Lily. Sarah nodded, adjusting herself on the hospital bed. "Yes, we do. Lily, sweetie, is there anything you'd like to ask either of me or your dad?" Lily bit her lip, her big eyes filled with emotion. "Why did you two break up?" she finally asked, her voice small but firm. Ethan and Sarah exchanged a look, weighted with unspoken history. Ethan was the one to answer, his voice rough with emotion. "It was my fault, Lily. I was young and foolish, with big dreams and a lot of fear. I thought I had to choose between my career and love. I made the wrong choice." Sarah reached out, gently touching Ethan's arm. "We were both young, Ethan. I could have fought harder. I could have looked for you when I found out about the pregnancy." Lily absorbed this information, tears forming in her eyes. Do you regret it?" "I regret it every day," Ethan answered immediately. "I regret not being there to see your first steps, hear your first words. I regret missing 8 precious years of your life." Sarah offered a sad smile. "I regret not being braver, not insisting on finding you, Ethan. But never, not for 1 second, did I regret having you, Lily. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Lily smiled through her tears, hugging her mom and reaching out for Ethan, who held her tightly. "What happens now?" the girl asked. "Where do we go from here?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Now we look ahead. We start building our family together." But first, he turned to Sarah. "We need to talk about your health, Sarah." Sarah nodded, her expression growing serious. "The doctors say the treatment is going well, but there's still a long road ahead." "What exactly is your diagnosis?" Ethan asked, leaning forward. "Hodgkin's lymphoma," Sarah replied. "An advanced stage, but treatable. The problem is that treatment is long and expensive." Ethan felt a wave of determination flood him. "Money is not an issue. I'll make sure you get the best possible care, Sarah, whether it's here or anywhere in the world." Sarah looked uncertain. "Ethan, I appreciate it, but I can't accept—" "Please," Ethan interrupted gently. "Let me do this. For you, for Lily, for all the years I missed. It's the least I can do." Lily glanced between her parents, hope filling her eyes. "Does that mean Mom's going to get better?" Sarah smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "The doctors are optimistic, sweetie. With proper treatment, my chances are good." Ethan nodded, his mind already planning the next steps. "I'll talk to the best specialists, make sure we have every option. And in the meantime," he hesitated, looking at Lily, "I think we need to discuss living arrangements." Lily's eyes widened. "Could we all live together?" Ethan and Sarah exchanged glances. Sarah answered gently. "Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Your dad and I, well, we need time to get to know each other again, but we'll definitely find a solution that keeps us all close." Ethan agreed. "How about we live in separate places, but close by? That way, Lily can be with each of us on different days, and we're all nearby to support Sarah's treatment." Lily seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding. "Okay, I guess that can work, but you both have to promise you won't split up again." The question hit Ethan and Sarah like a punch to the gut. Ethan knelt by the bed, getting on eye level with Lily. "Lily, I promise you I'll never disappear from your life, or your mom's, again. I can't promise that your mom and I will be together romantically. We have a lot of history and lost time between us. But I promise we will always be a family, one way or another." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Your dad's right, sweetie. No matter what happens between us, you will always be our #1 priority." Lily seemed to accept that, visibly relaxing. "Okay, but you have to promise you'll at least try to be friends." Ethan and Sarah laughed softly, the tension in the room easing a bit. "We promise," they said in unison. As the conversation continued, they discussed practical details. Lily's schooling, transferring to a specialized treatment center, temporary housing arrangements. It was a delicate process, full of conflicting emotions and difficult adjustments. Ethan found himself amazed by Lily's resilience and her ability to adapt to such drastic changes. And Sarah, she kept surprising him with her strength and grace in the face of such challenges. As the day wore on, Ethan felt a swirl of emotions. There was guilt for the past and what Sarah and Lily had endured. But there was also hope, hope for a future together, for a chance to right his past wrongs. When it was finally time to leave, Ethan found himself reluctant to exit Sarah's hospital room. Lily hugged him tightly, and he felt his heart surge with love. "I'll be back tomorrow, I promise," he said, kissing the top of his daughter's head. Turning to Sarah, he hesitated for a moment before leaning in and softly kissing her cheek. "Thank you," he murmured, "for being so strong, for raising our daughter so wonderfully. I promise I'll do everything I can to help you both from now on." Sarah smiled, her eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. "Thank you for coming back to us, Ethan, even if it took a while." Leaving the hospital that night, Ethan felt as though he was stepping into a new chapter of his life. The path ahead would be challenging, filled with obstacles and difficult moments. But for the first time in years, he felt truly alive, genuinely motivated. He had a family to care for, mistakes to correct, and a future to build. And Ethan Bennett was determined to do it right this time. The sun had barely risen when Ethan was awakened by the insistent ringing of his phone. Still groggy, he answered, only to be barraged by the frantic voice of his press officer. "Mr. Bennett, we have a problem." The story leaked. Within hours, Ethan's private life became national news. Tech tycoon discovers lost daughter, secret romance of businessman Ethan Bennett revealed, screamed the headlines on every newsstand and website. Surrounded by a crowd of reporters at the hospital entrance, Ethan struggled to maintain composure. "Please, respect our privacy at this delicate time," he repeated, trying to push through. Inside Sarah's room, the atmosphere was tense. Lily watched anxiously out the window at the frenzy outside. "Why are there so many people here, Dad?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan sighed, drawing the curtains. "Some people think our story is interesting, sweetheart. But don't worry, I'm going to protect you." Sarah watched the scene, concern and guilt in her expression. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never imagined this would cause so much uproar." He turned to her, offering a tired smile. "It's not your fault, Sarah. We'll get through this together." In the days that followed, Ethan juggled carefully managed interviews, negotiations with his company's board, and most importantly, time with his new family. Every free moment was devoted to Lily and Sarah. One afternoon, while Ethan was on the phone discussing PR strategies, Lily gently interrupted him. "Dad," she said, tugging on his sleeve, "Mom's sad. I think she needs you now." Ethan looked at his daughter, surprised by her perceptiveness. He ended the call quickly and followed Lily to Sarah's room. Sarah sat on the bed, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "Sorry," she murmured when she saw them. "I guess the stress finally got to me." Ethan sat beside her, hesitant at first, before taking her hand. "Hey, we're in this together, remember? You don't have to be strong all the time." Lily climbed onto the bed, hugging both parents. "We're a family now," she declared with a child's simple wisdom. "Families help each other." In that moment, something changed. The tension between Ethan and Sarah began to ease, replaced by a mutual understanding and a shared goal: caring for Lily. Over the following weeks, Ethan began to overhaul his life completely. He delegated more responsibilities at work, refused business trips, and made the hospital his second home. One day, while he was helping Lily with her homework in Sarah's room, Ethan realized he was smiling genuinely for the first time in years. Work, once his sole focus, now seemed secondary compared to these moments with his daughter and Sarah. "You know," he said, looking at Sarah, "I think I finally understand what you meant that summer, about what really matters in life." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with a mix of surprise and affection. Better late than never. Ethan Bennett. Lily glanced between her parents, a mischievous grin on her face. "You two are being silly again," she declared, making them all laugh. Still, not every moment was joyful. Adjusting to their new family dynamic brought challenges. Ethan, used to having complete control over his life, now had to learn co-parenting and how to handle a child's emotional needs. One evening, after a frustrating disagreement with Sarah about Lily's education, Ethan retreated to the hospital cafeteria. To his surprise, Lily followed him. "Dad," she said, sitting beside him, "did you and Mom fight again?" Ethan sighed. "Not exactly, sweetheart. Sometimes adults disagree about things." Lily nodded wisely. "Like when my best friend and I argue about which color is best. Purple is obviously the best, but she insists it's blue. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. Something like that? Yes. Well, Lily continued, when that happens, our teacher makes us sit down and talk. Maybe you and Mom should try that. Ethan looked at his daughter, marveling at her simple wisdom. You know what? I think you're absolutely right. Following Lily's advice, Ethan and Sarah began having regular conversations, openly discussing their fears, expectations, and hopes for the future. Slowly, they started rebuilding trust and understanding. As days turned into weeks, a new routine emerged. Ethan split his time between work, the hospital, and the apartment he had rented nearby to stay close to Lily and Sarah. Mornings were spent taking Lily to school, afternoons visiting the hospital and helping with homework, and nights in honest conversations with Sarah once Lily fell asleep. One day, while watching Lily peacefully nap on the hospital room sofa, Ethan turned to Sarah. "Thank you," he said softly. Sarah tilted her head, curious. For what? For not giving up, for raising our daughter so wonderfully, for giving me a second chance. Sarah smiled, unshed tears glinting in her eyes. Thank you for coming back, Ethan, for being here now. In that moment, looking at Sarah and his daughter sleeping, Ethan felt a peace he had never experienced before. The challenges were still many: Sarah's health, Lily's adaptation, the adjustments in his own life. But for the first time, he did not feel alone in facing them. They were a family now, imperfect, in progress, but a family. And together, Ethan knew they could face anything the future held. Dr. Emily Carter's office was steeped in a tense silence. Ethan and Sarah sat side by side, their hands unconsciously intertwined, as the doctor explained the results of Sarah's latest tests. The conventional treatment isn't having the effect we hoped, Emily said, her professional tone barely hiding the worry in her eyes. But there is one option we can consider. Ethan leaned forward, his voice tight. What option? Emily opened a folder on her desk. There's an experimental treatment that's shown promising results in cases like Sarah's. It's a combination of advanced immunotherapy and a new targeted drug. Sarah squeezed Ethan's hand. But, she asked, sensing there was more. Emily sighed. But it's extremely expensive and not covered by any insurance yet. Also, because it's experimental, there are significant risks. Ethan felt his heart pound. How much? The full course of treatment would cost around $2 million, Emily replied, watching their reactions carefully. Sarah gasped, letting go of Ethan's hand. That's impossible. We can't even consider that. Ethan was already doing mental calculations. His company was doing well. He had solid investments. $2 million was significant, but not impossible. We can do this, he said firmly. I can pay for it. Sarah stared at him, her eyes wide. Ethan, no. It's too much. You've already done so much. Sarah, Ethan interrupted gently, taking her hands. Money is just money. Your life, your future with Lily, this is what really matters. Please, let me do this. Emily watched them interact with a mixture of admiration and concern. Think it over carefully, she advised. This treatment is rigorous and not guaranteed, but it's our best shot right now. Sarah closed her eyes, silent tears slipping down her face. I'm scared, she admitted in a whisper. Ethan pulled her close, hugging her. I know. I am too. But we're in this together, remember? You, me, and Lily. We'll fight together. After a long moment, Sarah nodded. Okay, she said, her voice trembling yet determined. Let's try. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparations. Ethan threw himself into the financial details, arranging fund transfers and adjusting his investments. Sarah underwent a series of preparatory exams, each more exhausting than the last. Lily, sensing the tension, did her best to help. She made elaborate get-well-soon cards for her mother and surprised Ethan with sudden hugs whenever he seemed particularly stressed. On the eve of the treatment, the family gathered in Sarah's hospital room. Lily had insisted on a makeshift pajama party, bringing blankets and pillows from home so we can all stay together, she explained, snuggling between her parents on the enlarged hospital bed. Ethan smiled, wrapping an arm around his daughter and Sarah. Great idea, Princess. Sarah, although visibly nervous, smiled at the sight of her little family gathered. Thank you, she said softly, for being here, for everything. Always, Ethan replied, his voice filled with emotion. Lily looked between her parents, her big eyes serious. Mom, you're going to get better, right? You have to promise. Sarah felt her heart tighten. Oh, sweetheart, she began, struggling to find the right words. Ethan interjected gently. Lily, remember when we talked about how doctors can't always promise things for sure? Lily nodded slowly. Well, this is one of those times, Ethan continued. But what we can promise is that we'll do everything we can to help Mom get better, and that no matter what happens, we'll be together. Sarah smiled gratefully at Ethan before turning to her daughter. Your dad's right, sweetie. I can't promise for sure that I'll be fine, but I promise I'll fight with all I have. For you, for us. Lily seemed to think for a moment, then nodded solemnly. Okay, but I'll help too. I'll be the best nurse's assistant you've ever seen. Her declaration drew laughter from Ethan and Sarah, easing some of the tension in the air. The next morning, when the doctors arrived to take Sarah for the first round of treatment, the atmosphere was one of cautious determination. Ethan held Sarah's hand tight as she was prepped, whispering words of encouragement. True to her word, Lily took on her assistant nurse role with comedic seriousness, insisting on wearing a small white apron that one of the nurses kindly lent her. When the time finally came for Sarah to be wheeled away, Ethan leaned over and kissed her gently on the forehead. We'll be here when you come back, he promised. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes, but a courageous smile on her lips. I know. My family. The following hours were a blend of anxiety and hope. Ethan alternated between working on his laptop and entertaining Lily with games and stories. The girl, sensing the seriousness of the situation, was unusually quiet and cooperative. When Sarah finally returned, pale and exhausted but conscious, she was met with relieved smiles and gentle hugs. How are you feeling? Ethan asked softly, adjusting her pillows. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, tired, a bit nauseous, but hopeful. Lily climbed carefully onto the bed, curling up next to her mother. You were so brave, Mom, she declared. Ethan watched the two of them, feeling a wave of love and protection wash over him. This was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. He knew there would be bad days, unpleasant side effects, moments of doubt and fear. But looking at Sarah and Lily, seeing the strength and love binding them together, Ethan felt a certainty grow within him. No matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a family. Rest now, he said softly, kissing Sarah's forehead and then Lily's. We're here. Always will be. And so, united by love and hope, the little family braced themselves for the challenges to come, one day at a time. Ethan's phone vibrated insistently, pulling him out of a light doze in the chair beside Sarah's bed. He checked the time. 3:27 a.m. With a sigh, he slipped out of the room to avoid waking Sarah and Lily. Ethan Bennett, he answered, his voice still rough with sleep. Mr. Bennett, it's Charles from the finance department. I'm sorry to call so late, but we have an emergency. The gravity in Charles's tone made Ethan snap to attention. What happened? Sir, we've discovered some significant discrepancies in our accounts. It appears there's been a massive embezzlement over the last few months. Ethan felt his stomach plummet. How much? Charles's answer hit like a punch to the gut. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Gone. The company Ethan had built over decades was on the verge of collapse. The following hours blurred into frantic phone calls, emergency video conferences, and a growing sense of despair. As the sun rose, the terrible truth emerged. Mark Thompson, a longtime partner and personal friend, had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to siphon funds from the company. Seated in an impromptu conference room at the hospital, Ethan stared at the figures on his laptop, barely able to believe what he was seeing. The company was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Years of hard work, sacrifice, and dreams were on the brink of collapse. "Mr. Bennett," his attorney's voice brought him back to reality. "We have to move quickly. There are options, but they all involve drastic cuts and possibly selling personal assets." Ethan nodded mechanically, his mind spinning. How could this be happening, and right now, when Sarah needed him the most? Suddenly the door opened, and Lily ran in. "Dad, Mom woke up and was asking for you." Ethan forced a smile, trying to mask his distress. "Thanks, sweetheart. I'll be there in a minute." Lily hesitated, her keen eyes noticing the tension on her father's face. "Is everything okay, Dad?" Ethan felt his heart constrict. How could he explain this to his daughter? How could he tell Sarah he might not be able to pay for her treatment anymore? "Everything's fine, Lily," he lied, hating himself for it. "Just some work issues. Nothing you need to worry about." But as he walked back to Sarah's room, Ethan knew he couldn't keep hiding the truth. They were a family now. They deserved to know. Sarah smiled when Ethan entered, but her smile faded quickly at his expression. "Ethan, what happened?" He sat on the edge of the bed, taking Sarah's hand. Lily settled beside them, her eyes wide with concern. I need to tell you both something," Ethan began, his voice trembling. "Something bad happened at the company. Something really bad." Over the next few minutes, Ethan explained as best he could, simplifying the complicated details so Lily could understand. He told them about Mark's betrayal, the lost money, and the company's uncertain future. "What does this mean for us, Ethan?" Sarah asked, her voice calm but her eyes betraying her fear. Ethan took a deep breath. "It means I might not be able to pay for your treatment anymore, Sarah. At least, not the way we planned." The silence that followed was deafening. Lily was the first to break it. But Mom needs the treatment," she cried, tears filling her eyes. "You promised you would help." Ethan felt as though his heart was being torn apart. "I know, sweetheart, and I'll do everything I can. I'll sell whatever is necessary, work day and night if I have to. But things are going to be hard for a while." Sarah squeezed Ethan's hand. "We'll get through this together," she said gently. "Maybe there are other treatment options, something more affordable." Ethan shook his head vehemently. "No, you deserve the best treatment possible. I'll find a way." Lily looked between her parents, her young mind struggling to process it all. "Can I help?" she asked hesitantly. "I can sell my toys or make lemonade." Her innocent offer almost broke Ethan. He pulled his daughter into a tight embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, just being here, being strong for your mom and me, helps more than you know." Sarah joined the hug, and for a moment the three of them stayed like that, united in their love and their fear. "We'll figure it out," Sarah whispered. "We always do." Ethan nodded, trying to believe her words. But inside, he was terrified. How could he save both his company and his family? In the days that followed, Ethan barely slept. He spent his nights in endless meetings, negotiating with banks, investors, and lawyers. During the day, he did his best to be there for Sarah and Lily, hiding his exhaustion behind forced smiles. One night, while working on his laptop in Sarah's hospital room, Ethan felt a small hand on his shoulder. It was Lily, her eyes sleepy but full of concern. "Dad," she said softly, "you need rest, too." Ethan smiled wearily. "I know, Princess. Just a few more minutes, okay?" Lily shook her head stubbornly. "No, now. Mom always says you can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself first." The simple wisdom of his daughter cut deep. Ethan closed the laptop and pulled Lily onto his lap. "You're right," he admitted. "Sometimes I think you're smarter than me." Lily grinned, nestling against his chest. "That's because I have the best teachers." In that moment, gazing at his daughter and at Sarah sleeping peacefully, Ethan felt a renewed determination. Yes, the situation was dire. Yes, the future was uncertain. But he had something priceless to fight for now, something far more precious than any business or fortune. He had a family, and for them he would face any challenge, overcome any obstacle. "We'll pull through," he whispered, more to himself than to Lily. "Somehow, we'll make it." And for the first time in days, Ethan allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right in the end. Morning sunlight filtered through the hospital room curtains, lighting up the determined yet weary faces of Ethan, Sarah, and Lily. Today, they would discuss the options for tackling the financial crisis threatening not only Ethan's company, but also Sarah's treatment. Ethan took a deep breath, ready to explain how dire things were. To his surprise, Sarah spoke first. "Ethan," she began, her voice gentle but firm, "we've thought a lot about this. Lily and I have been talking, and we want you to know we're here for you, the same way you've been here for us." Lily nodded vigorously. "Yeah, Dad, we're a team, remember?" Ethan felt a knot form in his throat. I don't know what to say. You shouldn't have to worry about this. Especially you, Sarah. You need to focus on getting better." Sarah reached out, taking Ethan's hand. "We're a family now. One person's worries are everyone's worries. And together, we're stronger." Lily hopped off her chair, pulling out a notepad and pencil. "I made a list of ideas to help," she announced proudly. Ethan couldn't help but smile as his 8-year-old daughter began reading her list, which included everything from selling lemonade in front of the hospital to having a talent show to raise funds. "Those are wonderful ideas, sweetheart," Ethan said, pulling Lily into a hug. "And they show exactly the spirit we need right now." Sarah smiled, watching father and daughter. "Lily's right, Ethan. We need to think creatively. Maybe we can't solve everything with lemonade, but together we can definitely come up with solutions." In the days that followed, the hospital room became a makeshift headquarters. Ethan brought in a whiteboard where they mapped out ideas and strategies. Sarah, though tired from treatment, offered valuable insights from her experience in small business management. Lily took on the role of morale booster, decorating the room with colorful posters of encouragement. One afternoon, while reviewing financial possibilities, Lily had a surprising idea. "What if we sell some of your paintings, Mom?" she suggested. "You always said they were special." Sarah and Ethan exchanged startled looks. Sarah had once been a promising artist before life took a different turn. "I'm not sure anyone would be interested in them now," Sarah hesitated. Ethan, however, saw the potential. "Actually, that could work. I have contacts in the art world. With the right story behind the paintings, we could generate interest." Lily's suggestion turned out to be a turning point. Ethan organized a benefit exhibition sharing Sarah's story and unveiling her long-forgotten artwork. The event not only raised significant funds, but also brought positive attention to the family's situation, contrasting the negative headlines about the financial scandal. Meanwhile, Ethan fought the legal battle against Mark Thompson. The lawsuit was grueling, with long hours of depositions and meetings with lawyers. But every time he returned exhausted to the hospital, he found renewed strength in his family's support. One particularly hard day, after a tense court session, Ethan walked back into Sarah's room to find her sitting up in bed, a radiant smile on her face. "Ethan! Lily!" she called excitedly. "Come see this." She lifted a lock of her hair, which had begun to grow back after months of chemotherapy. "It's coming back," she said, tears of joy filling her eyes. Lily squealed with delight, racing to hug her mother. Ethan felt as though a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. It was a small sign, but loaded with hope. "The doctors say the latest tests look promising," Sarah continued. "The treatment is working better than expected." Ethan joined the hug, overcome by a wave of emotion. In the midst of all the chaos and uncertainty, here was a ray of light, proof that not all was lost. "See, Dad?" Lily said, looking at Ethan with sparkling eyes. "Everything's going to be fine. We're fighters." Ethan laughed, ruffling his daughter's hair. "Yes, we are, especially you, my little warrior." Sarah's improvement seemed to infuse everyone with renewed energy. Ethan attacked the company's problems with vigor. He negotiated deals, restructured departments, and with the help of loyal employees, slowly began to rebuild what Mark had destroyed. The final confrontation with Mark came a few weeks later in court. Ethan faced his former friend and partner, his voice steady as he detailed the betrayal and its impact. "What you did didn't just affect me or the company, Mark," he declared. "It affected countless families, including mine. But you know what? You didn't break us. You made us stronger." As Mark was taken into custody, Ethan felt a mix of sadness and relief. It marked the end of a painful chapter, but also the start of something new. Returning to the hospital that evening, Ethan found Sarah out of bed for the first time in weeks, sitting in a chair with Lily by her side, both drawing together. "How did it go?" Sarah asked softly. Ethan sat beside them, exhausted, yet at peace. "It's over. Mark will face the consequences of his actions. And we have a long road ahead, but we're on the right path." Lily held up her drawing, showing 4 stick figures holding hands. "Look, Dad, it's us." Ethan examined the drawing, noticing a 4th figure alongside him, Sarah and Lily. "Who's that, sweetheart?" Lily smiled shyly. "It's the baby we might have one day. You know, when Mom gets better and you two get married." Ethan and Sarah exchanged surprised glances, then burst into laughter, the first carefree laugh in months. "Well," Ethan said, pulling Sarah and Lily close, "you never know what the future holds. But one thing's for sure, as long as we're together, we can face anything." Sarah nodded, resting her head on Ethan's shoulder. "United in adversity," she murmured. "And in joy," Ethan finished. "And forever," Lily added. As the little family remained entwined, Ethan reflected on the incredible journey they had taken. Out of their darkest moments had come a beacon of hope, an unbreakable bond forged through challenges and unconditional love. The future was still uncertain, with many obstacles left to overcome, but Ethan knew that with Sarah and Lily by his side, there was nothing they couldn't face. Together, they were stronger than any adversity life could throw at them. The autumn sun bathed Ethan Bennett's Beverly Hills estate in a golden light, reflecting off the freshly cleaned windows and illuminating the meticulously landscaped gardens. A year had passed since that fateful night when a small girl had appeared on his doorstep, forever altering the course of 3 lives. Ethan straightened his tie, glancing at his reflection in the foyer's grand mirror. He barely recognized the man looking back. His eyes, once tired and empty, now shone with purpose and joy. The worry lines etched on his face had softened, replaced by laugh lines. "Dad, are you ready?" Lily's excited voice echoed through the house. Ethan smiled, turning to see his daughter descending the sweeping staircase, a light blue dress swaying around her. Her hair, now longer, was styled in an elaborate braid. "Almost ready, Princess," he replied, amazed by how much she had grown and blossomed in the past year. Sarah appeared behind her, radiant in an emerald green dress that highlighted her eyes. Her hair, fully regrown, fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Most importantly, there was a healthy color in her cheeks and a vibrancy Ethan had once feared he'd never see again. "You both look absolutely stunning," Ethan said, his heart swelling with a profound love. Sarah smiled, stepping forward to adjust Ethan's tie. "You're not looking too shabby yourself, Mr. Bennett," she teased, planting a soft kiss on his cheek. Lily made a playful, disgusted face. "Ugh, grown-up kisses." The 3 of them laughed, their shared joy echoing through the mansion that, a year ago, had been a cold, empty shell, but now overflowed with life and love. As they headed to the car, Ethan reflected on the tumultuous year they had faced. Saving his company had been a brutal fight, sleepless nights, tough negotiations, and difficult decisions. But with complete transparency, a bold restructuring, and the unwavering support of his loyal employees, they had not only survived, but thrived. Bennett Enterprises emerged from the crisis stronger and more ethical than ever. Ethan had implemented strict corporate governance policies and established a relief fund for employees in hardship, inspired by his own family's ordeal. Sarah's treatment had been an equally arduous battle. There were dark days filled with debilitating side effects, moments of fear and uncertainty. But with every obstacle, the family had grown closer. Lily became a little nurse, always ready with a smile or a silly joke to cheer up her mom. Ethan balanced his time between the company and the hospital, determined not to miss a single important moment. Then, on a sunny spring day, the news they had scarcely dared to hope for arrived. Sarah was in complete remission. The car glided smoothly through the city streets, heading toward the convention center where the charity gala would be held. Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing Lily humming happily in the back seat and Sarah beside him, her hand resting comfortably on his. "Nervous?" Sarah asked softly. Ethan smiled. "A little. I never thought I'd be doing something like this." Tonight's event was the official launch of the New Beginnings Foundation, founded by Ethan to help families facing serious illnesses and children in vulnerable situations. It was the culmination of months of planning, an initiative born directly from his own experiences. Upon arrival, Ethan was immediately swept into the frenzy of final preparations. Sarah and Lily mingled with the guests, their story of courage and resilience touching hearts and inspiring generosity. Finally, it was time for Ethan's speech. He stepped onto the stage, looking out at the sea of expectant faces. His gaze found Sarah and Lily in the front row, and he felt a rush of strength and love. "A little over a year ago," Ethan began, his voice clear and steady, "I was a very different man, successful in the world's eyes, but empty inside. Then, on a night that changed everything, a little girl showed up on my doorstep." He recounted the story of Lily, of Sarah, of the journey that had brought them all together. He spoke of the battle against cancer, the financial betrayal, the moments of despair, and the small victories that had kept them going. "What I've learned," Ethan continued, his voice thick with emotion, "is that true wealth isn't in bank accounts or corporate empires. It's in the bonds we form, the love we share, the difference we make in each other's lives." He explained the mission of the New Beginnings Foundation, how it would provide financial, emotional, and logistical support to families facing medical crises, because no one should face these challenges alone, Ethan concluded, and because each of us deserves a chance to start over. The applause was thunderous. Sarah and Lily rushed to the stage, wrapping Ethan in a tight hug, tears of joy and pride sparkling in their eyes. Hours later, with the event a resounding success, the family returned to the mansion, exhausted but happy. They settled in the now cozy living room, a space now filled with family photos. A sleepy Lily cuddled between Ethan and Sarah on the couch. "We did a good thing today, didn't we?" she murmured. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah replied, kissing the top of her head. "A very good thing." Ethan looked at his family, a wave of profound gratitude washing over him. "You two have changed my life completely," he said softly. "You've brought me purpose, joy, shown me what really matters." Sarah reached over, entwining her fingers with Ethan's. "You've changed our lives too, Ethan. You gave us hope when we needed it most." Lily yawned, her eyes closing. "We're a family of superheroes," she mumbled, "saving the world, one hug at a time." Ethan and Sarah chuckled quietly, exchanging a look of deep love and understanding. In that moment, wrapped in the warmth of his family, Ethan felt a peace he had never known. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. There would be challenges, certainly, but Ethan knew they would face them together. The journey of redemption that began with a frightened child on his doorstep had grown into something greater than he could have ever imagined. As the sun set outside, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, the Bennett family remained united, a living testament to the power of forgiveness, love, and new beginnings. Ethan glanced once more at Sarah and Lily, now peacefully asleep, his heart overflowing. "Thank you," he whispered, "to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had orchestrated this incredible second chance. And there, in the comforting stillness of his home, Ethan Bennett finally understood the true meaning of wealth, success, and happiness. It wasn't about what you had, but about who you loved and how you made a difference in the world. With that comforting thought, he closed his eyes, ready to dream of the many wonderful days still to come, alongside the two people who had become his entire world.